is it necessary to be born into a rich and prominent family in order to become a rich person yourself? Quite a lot of people will give an affirmative answer to this question, and this is indeed often the case, but there are many exceptions to any rule. And one of the most striking was Andrew Carnegie, a man who really started fully from scratch and by the end of his life became the owner of a giant business empire. Its value in modern money is estimated at hundreds of billions of dollars, of which a significant part was donated by him to charity. But how did he manage to become so rich without startup capital and the right connections? Well, let's ask Carnegie himself, especially since he never refused to talk about it. Let's touch upon a man named Andrew Carnegie. So this is the topic of today's episode. Keep watching. The main thing is to look at life optimistically. Sit down, young man. One of the richest people in America nodded his head to the novice writer who entered the room. Ask me what brought you to me and what interests you the most. Thank you, sir. The man who entered carefully sat down in a chair and took out a notebook with a pencil. My name is Napoleon Hill and I want to write a book on how to become a rich man. A lot of people believe that it's almost impossible for an ordinary person to achieve success, but you have proved the opposite by your example. Your name has become a symbol of success, and so I'd like to ask you, how did you manage to do it? You know, I could talk for a long time about my financial transactions, but this is not the most important thing throughout this journey. The most important thing in my life is the ability to forget about problems and enjoy life, and also to look at life with optimism in any case. It's much more significant than having a startup capital of $1 million. Seeing that Hill didn't fully understand his idea, Carnegie smiled once more. He had already faced this in his life, when people didn't understand how something more important than capital could be for a businessman, and he remembered how it all began for him many years ago. Life wasn't easy in distant Scotland, where a boy named Andrew was born more than 7 decades ago. And also poor kind of life, which was not surprising for the family of a simple weaver who could hardly earn a living. It's not surprising that after a while, Carnegie's father decided to try his luck overseas and went there with his wife and children when the boy was just 13 years old. Arriving in the United States, the family settled in Pittsburgh and Andrew almost immediately went to work in a weaving factory. His first salary was 80 cents a week with a 12-hour workday. Then he moved to a more qualified position with a salary of $1.50. Know the value of money and don't throw it around. In the next few years, he changed a number of jobs and worked as a laborer, then as a fireman, a messenger, an accountant, and finally a telegraph operator. Carnegie didn't disdain any work and from childhood knew the value of money and therefore never threw it away. He was determined to get out of poverty and began to collect capital for future investments. And most importantly, he showed his hard work and enthusiasm everywhere, looking at life in an optimistic way. As a result of these views and hard work, this gave its positive effects. At first, his salary began to grow. After changing 3 jobs, he began to receive $13 a week. And then Andrew was noticed in one of the offices and offered an office job, which was a promotion for him and at the same time the first step to success. And perhaps someone else would have thought about this offer, but Carnegie accepted it immediately, and when he was asked, "When can you start working?" he replied, "Right now." Later, he recalled that he didn't want to miss the opportunity. After all, in the case of delay, another person could be taken instead of him. And in the future, Andrew did not think too much about his decisions, preferring to act quickly and risk something not so significant in life, instead of procrastination and the risk of losing the entire chance. Do your own thing. In general, his financial situation improved, but Carnegie went even further. He began to invest the money he earned in stocks. For a man from his circle at the time, this was very unusual, but he didn't pay attention to it when he invested in railroad stocks. His first investment was $610, and back then in the late 1850s, it was a new field of activity with the corresponding risk. However, Andrew didn't stop and, having mortgaged the house he inherited from his parents, bought securities of the railway company for as much as $50,000. And in the end, he was pretty right. In a year and a half, they cost as much as $630,000. The bet on new technologies worked, and this happened more than once in the future. After that, Carnegie stopped being an employee and founded his own steel bridge construction company, Keystone Bridge Works. At that time, he was 27 years old and continued to earn money on investments. And 3 years later, he founded his own steel company, Carnegie Steel Company. And then he began to invest all of his money in it, in accordance with another principle. Never buy what you cannot pay for, and do not sell what does not belong to you. That's right, young man, the multimillionaire said to Hill, who was listening extremely attentively. I only had shares in other people's companies in the beginning, but then I sold them all to focus on my own businesses. Look for talented people, and you don't have to delve into everything yourself. And here it's not at all necessary to delve into everything yourself, spending a lot of your precious time on it. Carnegie followed another of his principles: look for people who know what to do better than you. That is, he paid special attention to the personnel issue, selecting the best managers for all his enterprises. He especially valued the ability to find such people, because one person cannot be know-it-all and work 24 hours a day. In general, he would fully agree with the statement of one famous statesman of the 20th century that personnel decide everything. In addition, it was Andrew Carnegie who first formed the structure that later became known as the think tank. This very center consisted of about 50 people in close coordination with each other, dealing with all issues related to the production and sale of steel. It was to them that he owed much of the rapid growth of his fortune, which, by the way, he never hid and didn't try to claim that he had achieved everything on his own. You know, Carnegie said thoughtfully, the best inheritance for a young man is to be born into poverty. And seeing the bewildered look of the interlocutor, he clarified that in this case he would actively look for ways to earn money, and the desire to get out of poverty would be a serious incitement for him. What about charity? Hill asked him after a pause. You donate large sums to it. Maybe you should help the poor more. Carnegie shook his head. The main goal should be to help those who will help themselves, and neither individuals nor people as a whole will become better thanks to charity donations. And this is true. Although this man ended up giving about 90% of his fortune to charity, it did not go to hand out money on the porch, because he considered education and self-improvement to be the most important tool for the development of both man in particular and civilization as a whole, and therefore he financed these institutions. In total, he gave money to about 3,000 libraries, museums, and universities in different countries, and he sincerely believed that charity is the key to a decent life. Money is just a tool to make the world a better place. And Carnegie has repeatedly said that he never set himself the goal of earning a lot of physical money. And now he repeated the same thing, adding that a man who dies rich dies disgraced. And in general, the life of a rich person, according to his conviction, should consist of two stages. At the first, he collects and accumulates his grandiose fortune, and at the second stage, he distributes it for good purposes. Therefore, when in 1901 he sold his steel company to another famous multimillionaire, John Pierpont Morgan, and received $300 million for it, he did not keep the huge money at the time in a piggy bank. And he founded several foundations, museums, and higher educational institutions, which remained and are quite successfully functioning a century after his death. Wait, so you don't want to do business anymore and you think you've achieved everything you wanted? The writer asked. Carnegie smiled once more. The accumulation of true wealth is the worst of all idols. Nothing is more demeaning than the worship of money. If I continue to devote myself entirely to business issues, focusing solely on making money, I will very soon degrade without any hope of revival. And John D. Rockefeller said something similar not long ago, thought Hill. Perhaps I'll have to try to talk to him. For sure, this person will be able to advise a lot of useful things. You seem to have an idea, am I right? Carnegie asked the writer. Don't you want to share it with me? Maybe I can help you in some way. And he told him about his idea to write a book that would motivate him to do business. His interlocutor listened attentively and nodded his head approvingly. Well, it's a good idea, and I'll give you recommendations. Motivation is very important, because those people who are unable to motivate themselves must be gratified with mediocrity, no matter how impressive their talents are. And it can be a desire to get rid of poverty, help other people, or change our world for the better. It doesn't really matter. In any case, try to make your name mean something for others. But then the time came to say goodbye, and before letting go of his interlocutor, Carnegie said to him goodbye. Well, interview, ask, write down, and systematize. I truly hope you'll be able to come up with a formula for success that would suit even people with the most modest abilities. In the end, it did happen, although not soon. Napoleon Hill released his famous bestseller Think and Grow Rich in 1937, after Carnegie's death. But he always noted that he owed his success primarily to this man, and on the first page of the book recorded this fact, dedicated to Andrew Carnegie, and the book itself has become one of the best-selling books of all time. That's it for today. We thank you for watching this episode, and in case if you liked this one, we recommend watching other episodes on the channel, as well as to leave a like and subscribe. Till next time.